Today we're installing the Jake's 3-inch spindle lift kit designed for the Yamaha Drive2. Included in this kit are your motor mount spacers, your front subframe spacers, your spindles, your steering rod extensions, your rear goalposts, as well as your rear subframe mount. You'll also get a hardware kit and a warning label. To do this, we're going to use a cordless drill and a standard sized mechanic tool set. Now let's get started. Included with your kit is a warning label. You need to place this in a highly visible area for the operator. We're going to place it right here on the front panel. You can also put it on the steering column or the front dash. Before we begin, be sure to turn the key switch to off and engage the parking brake. You'll notice that we've lifted the front of the cart up, placed it on jack stands, and removed the factory tires. You'll also see that we removed the front bumper for video purposes only. Now we're going to remove the front hub by popping off the dust cap and removing the spindle nut. You're going to retain all of these pieces. Next, we're going to remove the tie rod ends here from the spindle. You want to use a 17mm wrench on the top side of the tie rod here to hold it in place. Remove the tie rod up out of the spindle and retain your hardware. Now we're going to remove and retain the spindle bolt and hardware, and we're going to discard the spindle itself. Now, using the same hardware, we're going to install the new Jake spindle. You'll notice the passenger side has the P on the front. The grease fitting also should point to the front of the golf cart. Now we're going to attach our steering rack mount to the back side of the spindle. You'll notice on the steering rack mount here, the curved edge goes to the inside of the cart. There are 2 threaded holes on the inside of the mount. We're going to use the 2 shorter button head bolts for these. Now we're going to take the 2 longer bolts, put them in the outside, and secure with the nuts supplied. Once all 4 bolts are in place, then we're going to tighten the hardware. Now we're going to attach our steering rack to our mount. You're going to invert the tie rod and then come up through the bottom of the steering rack mount and secure with the retained nut. Now we can reattach our factory hub using the retained hardware. You also want to install a new cotter pin here. Now we're going to repeat these same steps on the driver's side. At this point, we've installed our new tires. We recommend a 20 by 10 by 10 tire. We're also going to go ahead and grease up our fittings on the front of the spindles here, and then move to the back. To install the rear lift, first thing we're going to do is remove the bag well by taking out and retaining the 2 bolts located here at the bottom of the bag well. Now we're going to remove the rear soundproofing cover by taking out the 2 bolts here and here. Now we're going to remove the 4 bolts that secure the front side of the soundproofing cover, located here. At this point, you want to chock the front wheels, lift the back of the cart up, and take off the rear tires. Now we're going to remove and retain the bolt located at the top of the spring here. You want to take a floor jack and put it up under the motor to support the weight. You don't want to lift up on it, but you want to just barely support the weight. Next, we're going to remove the bolts located here at the rear of the subframe, right inside the rear bumper. Now you're going to remove the 2 bolts located here in front of the rear wheels on both sides. Now we're going to remove and retain the nuts at the motor mounts here. Now we're going to attach our rear goalpost to the top mounts where we detached the springs from earlier using the 7/16 by 2.5 inch bolts provided. For this video, we used a pre-production sample of the rear goalpost. You'll notice a J on both sides. For the model you have, there will be one J. This J will go to the front of the golf cart. Once both bolts are in place, then tighten your hardware. Now we're going to install our shocks into the goalpost to the inside hole and secure it using the OEM retained hardware. Once both bolts are in place, then you can tighten your hardware. To install the motor mount spacer, you're going to need a partner to work the floor jack while you insert the spacer. You're going to need to set the jack up right here under the motor mount so that when you pick it up, the bolt separates from this flat plate. Now have your partner slowly lift up on the bottom of the motor mount. Now you're going to take the motor mount spacer with the slotted hole to the bottom and slide it in between the bolt and the flat plate here, and then lower it back into place. Put the nut on the driver's side bolt about 2 threads to hold it in place. Now you're going to relocate the floor jack to the other side and repeat this process. The easiest way to get this bolt back into the hole is to slowly lower the jack stand and pull on the rear suspension to turn it to get it into place. Let the weight drop the frame back into the hole. Once both bolts are in place, hand tighten your hardware. Now we're going to attach the front subframe spacer as shown to the bottom side of the frame here. You're going to use the 10mm by 60mm bolt and attach it at the top. Now you're going to have a partner pick up on the frame and match the subframe up with the new spacer. Once both of these bolts are in place, you want to tighten it a little more. You don't want to get these 2 bolts fully tightened yet. Next, you're going to take the 7/16 by 1 inch bolt and attach the subframe to the new spacer here at the bottom. Once all 3 pieces are in place, do not tighten yet. We're going to repeat this process on the other side, but do not tighten any hardware. Moving to the rear spacer and hitch, we're going to attach it at the 2 factory bolt hole locations here and here. These are the 2 locations we removed the OEM black bolts from when we loosened our subframe here behind the bumper. We're going to use these same bolts and go up through the bottom of the spacer here and attach it to the frame. Once both bolts are in place, then tighten your hardware. Now we're going to use the 3/8 by 1 inch bolts and attach the subframe to the spacer/hitch here. We're going to use a floor jack to make up the difference here, get both bolts in place, and then we'll tighten. Once both bolts are in place, then you can tighten your hardware. At this point, we can work our way back to the front of the cart and tighten up all of our spacers and hardware. Now that all of our hardware is tightened, we can reinstall our bag wheel and attach our new tires. Now that we have our lift kit installed, we're going to come back around to the front of the cart and we're going to do the alignment. First thing you want to do is make sure that your steering wheel is centered and that your tires are as straight as they possibly can be. Now you're going to take a tape measure and go in between 2 common points on the front side of the tire and on the back of the tire. What we need to be is an 1/8 inch toed in on the front side. For example, For 30 inches across on the front, you need to be 30 and 1/8 inch across on the back. At this point, even if your measurements are good and you're towed in 1/8 inch in the front, you want to drive the cart around a little bit, come back and recheck it. If it's not good, like this cart here, what we're going to do is get a floor jack and we're going to pick the cart up. We're going to loosen up the nut here on the tie rod end and then turn the steering rack here. You want to make sure that you turn it evenly on both tires so that you get an even amount of distance in between. Don't do 4 turns on one side, no turns on the other, do 2 and 2. We're going to repeat this on the other side, and when we're done, we're going to lower the cart down, drive it around again, and repeat this process until the measurement is 1/8 towed in the front. Once you've achieved your 1/8 inch tow in the front, you're now finished installing your Jake's 3-inch spindle lift kit designed for the Yamaha Drive 2.